ago called The Art of Life War. And this presented a somewhat controversial perspective on the relation of AGI to the future of humanity. What Hugo forecasts in that book is a war between those who want superhuman AGI to advance really fast and those who think it's too dangerous and should be stopped. And Hugo suggested we do a sort of brief debate or presentation of alternate views on whether AGIs should be built. Are they dangerous? Are they good? And something like that. It's a conversation between us. So originally we had thought to have a debate between what you would call a cosmist and a Terran. The cosmist being somebody who wants AGIs to rise and take over the cosmos, no matter what the consequences, does pesky little monkey man. And a Terran being someone who wants good old-fashioned human biological values and stop all technology development, if that's what it takes to do that. Now, when I thought about it more, it seemed things were a little more nuanced than that. So the way we're organizing it now, we're going to give maybe two minutes or so at each of 4 different points of view and have a little discussion. So Hugo is a kind of schizophrenic guy. He's going to give us 2 minutes on cosmism as he sees it, and then 2 minutes on Terranism as he sees it. So we'll get to hear both sides.
I'll sit in 2 chairs.
Yeah, you can sit. We'll bring another chair for you. Yeah. We're going to hear from both sides of Hugo's brain here, I'll then very briefly give my view of the cosmist perspective. And we have Kelly here to give a different view, which Hugo didn't exactly consider, which is this sort of enlightenment and spirituality perspective on the advancement of technology. So let us start with Hugo versus Hugo. Hugo the cosmist. Let's go first.
The universe is 13.7 billion years old. Our solar system's been around for 4.6 billion years old. Laws of chemistry and physics are the same everywhere. Light is probably extremely common. There's probably lots of light out there.
Can you talk louder?
Trillion stars.
Hold the microphone closer.
Can you try the microphone maybe a bit?
Trillion stars, billions of years older than we are. So highly likely they're ultra advanced creatures out there. So that's the big picture. So the strongest cosmist argument I see is the big picture argument. Our pathetic human little lives snuffed out in 80 years, and we could build gods, right? So it's the God-building argument. How do you stop it? The economic momentum is going to be enormous in the 2020s. Even Bill Gates is on record saying the home robot industry will be worth trillions of dollars by the end of 2030 or so. So how do you stop it? The military momentum argument, how do you stop that? In the time frame we're talking about, China rising, America relatively declining. And if China doesn't democratize within 10 years, you have enormous rivalry between the 2 superpowers. And one side can't afford to allow the other side to get ahead of it in economic terms. So in form of a slogan, do we build gods or do we build our potential exterminators? That's 2 minutes.
Right. Now the other side of Hugo's personality, the Terran.
Okay. If we build these things, they would just utterly outclass us. So there would be no way we could predict their ethics towards us. I do this in the media. They may become eventually so superior to us, they treat us like mosquitoes as a pest, and be utterly indifferent towards us. Every time I'm doing this, I'm killing bacteria. I don't give a damn. The bacteria, right? And when you do the numbers, I mean, just if you nanotech even just a cubic millimeter on 1 bit 1 atom switching in femtoseconds, I calculated that 1 cubic millimeter can outperform the human brain in bits per second by a factor of a quintillion. That's 1,000,000 trillion times. So sometimes I get the feeling I'm the only physicist in this community, and no one else really understands the enormity of the potential of these creatures, right? They're just they're just, well, I use the term godlike because.
But you're a Terran, you don't want
okay, now look,
gods.
so now I'm a Terran. So I'll imagine Ben's a cosmist. And I'll say, Ben, if you're dead serious about building these things, if you're going to put not just my survival at risk, but the whole of humanity's survival at risk, then to be blunt, I'll fucking kill you. And I'll go to war and form political communities, and we just won't let you do what you want. We'll just kill you. We will go to war to keep humanity the dominant species. This is the biggest issue of our century. Do we build these things or not? So there are many scenarios, but the most probable scenario I see is that we guys, the Terrans, just become the biggest witch hunt that's ever occurred to exterminate the millions of cosmists for the sake of the survival of the billions of human beings. That's the Terran point of view. Yeah, it's a war issue.
All right, so I wrote a brief book in 2010 called A Cosmist Manifesto, which gives a sort of philosophical view of the future of humanity, AGI, and the universe, and so forth. Regarding this issue that the two halves of Hugo's brain have just debated, my view is actually a little closer to Ray Kurzweil's, though I'm not quite as optimistic as Ray. The perspective I would take is more what you might call cyborgist. I do think in the long run, human beings are not the most intelligent creatures that are going to exist on this planet, and probably we're not the most intelligent creatures to exist anywhere in the universe. And I look forward to creating artificial minds that are tremendously smarter than any of us in this room, and ultimately to fusing my human mind with some of these very powerful artificial minds. On the other hand, if some smart robot walked into my house and said, well, okay, I'm going to murder your daughter now and repurpose her molecules to make my processing power superior, I would probably blow up that robot to save my daughter, if you came down to that. Even though in the long run, I would like to see massively superhuman intelligence flourish. So the way I see things happening sort of optimistically is we'll create AGIs that are increasingly intelligent, and we will network ourselves with them in various ways. We'll upload ourselves, as Randall was discussing. We'll do brain-computer interfacing to enhance our minds, connect our minds with each other's brains and minds, connect our minds with the computer. Imagine your IQ increases by, say, 10% each year through various kinds of brain-computer hybridization, mind uploading, and whatnot. If your IQ increased by 10% each year, within 100 years, you'd be something unrecognizable to yourself right now. Yet, each step of the way, you would still feel like yourself, growing and learning it and becoming smarter and smarter. In effect, you wouldn't just be building the gods, you would be becoming the gods that you had built. Now, there might also be some supercomputer in a grain of sand over here. But as long as we have the chance to progressively increase our intelligence and become one with the gods we're creating, while still feeling like we are ourselves during this process, then I would see that as an ethically and emotionally satisfying yet exit strategy for my current human self. Like I wouldn't want the robot to kill my daughter and repurpose her molecules. However, if she were to link in to the AI matrix and increase her intelligence 10% each year and become a cyborg, she would probably find that good fun, and that doesn't raise the same kind of objection in my mind. I mean, so I don't know what's going to happen. It's possible we'll have a war like Hugo's two halves predict. On the other hand, there's also the possibility of something with humans and machines growing more and more intelligent together and going in directions we can't foresee in detail right now.
So we're specifically talking about AGI, not AI, right?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So I'm for using technology to look at advancing humans. So as we heard Dr. Martin speaking yesterday about looking at creating more, what you could say is enlightenment, but basically there's a shift in what happens with people's brains where they have something that's called enlightenment in some traditions or non-duality in some, where they become more peaceful. Now there are many debates on this, in that field, about whether or not this is going to lead to a peaceful world. Is everybody going to be happy? If everybody's enlightened, does that mean we have world peace? And I would argue no, that doesn't mean we'll have world peace, but I would argue that these people are increasingly disconnected from their emotions as they go farther down the scale, and therefore less subject to very basic emotional responses, very animalistic emotional responses, which can cause people to do things more irrationally, right? Have really irrational reactions or angry things. So we think about the people developing these AGIs and also interacting with these AGIs. I think it makes a lot more sense that we want those people to be a little more balanced and a little less coming from that animalistic, very brute place where they can easily get angry and decide, let's just do this, that have emotions that can cause more problems, guiding their actions as they're programming and or interacting with these AGIs. So it really makes sense to shift the technology toward making our brains more peaceful, but also more intelligent and functional. And we're looking at how it actually changes the brain, and it might be, who knows how that affects the IQ, we haven't looked at that yet. So a lot more research needs to go into looking at how we are evolving as humans and help support that process so that we can better understand what we're creating, because we already have nuclear bombs, in the hands of humans, but we don't know where they're at on a developmental level. I mean, things are already scary, so before we take that to a whole nother level, we should really come back and look at how can we help humans get to a point where they can be more balanced and learn more about what happens there so we can move forward from a better place as a species.
Yeah, Hugo, why don't you say something for a moment about these questionnaires that they're doing?
Okay. I'm so sick of the over-optimism of Ray Kurzweil. So, what can I do to sort of counter this? Because it seems to me so naive. Also, I suspect, I'm not sure, but I suspect there is a cultural difference between Old World and New World. Americans seem to be so much more optimistic, whereas Chinese, definitely, Europeans tend to be more open to the idea of negative scenarios. So I thought questionnaires might be the way to go. So the last 6 months I've been doing this. This is the third one. This is the third time. The first time was to a group of electrical engineers, only about 30 people in Australia and Melbourne. And they shocked the pants out of me. 60% of them thought a war was coming. I didn't expect that at all. And the second group, completely different, completely non-techie at all. They were architects and designers and so forth. And a quarter of the men, the whole issue was completely new to them. They never heard of it before. But even a quarter of the men thought something really vicious and negative was coming. And about 40% of the women were hesitating. They weren't sure. So I'm really curious to see how you, because you're Humanity Plus, right? You're AGI guys. I'm really curious to see what you think. And I'm planning the next couple of months to launch press release and so forth to a dozen countries. I think the time is right, especially in a couple of the English-speaking countries. It's gone mainstream in movies and so forth. Yeah, practical, please. Stew on it. Don't rush. You've got lunch. Think about it. I hope you find some of the questions stimulating, interesting. Fill it in over lunch, and then please. I'm the guy in the blue shirt. just give them back to me, please. When you come back to lunch.
You can, so Hugo has created these surveys with a little help from my dad, who's a sociology professor. And as you like, you can fill them out now after lunch. You can leave the completed surveys at the registration desk. Then Hugo will compile the results and send an email to everyone telling what you guys have said, whether you all agree with them that a war is coming, or what your views are on these issues. So now we don't have too much time, but we can maybe have 5 minutes of questions and discussion on the end of the world, if anyone has something to say. Let's hear. Is the end there?
Actually, one big question they have, sort of whole discussion, what are we optimizing towards? Like, when I think of the human being we're solution, we're just a machine, and I think sort of when Kelly's talking about the spiritual side, or when we're talking about the also some of the technical side, we're just a machine. Like, what are we optimizing towards? And like my sort of background is more in philosophy, so sort of more general thinking. And I'm not sure if I want to be myself. I'm not sure if I want to be the machine that I am. And when you're talking sort of about the general artificial intelligence, we are all specialists, right? There are tons of people in the world who are just sort of who already are like robots, if you want so. They're like artificial, or they're like cheap household robots. So I think one question that one question that I'm like asking like to bring up is like, what are we optimizing towards? And what is the real quality of being a human being? And I have the feeling that already sort of the people who are in this room were tremendously different. And yeah, I guess, and if I could choose, like if I would build sort of like something greater than myself, I'd like to be a lot more than I am at the moment. But then the question arises, if I could build something like infinitely intelligent, what is it that I want to do? Like what am I optimizing towards? Because essentially sort of the world that we maneuver in right now is like super practical, right? Or like to the largest extent is very practical. So yeah.
Could it be that?
But if you're going to optimize the machine that is you, then why not optimize the machine that is you before you start building these other machines? That would be my 2 cents on that.
Yeah, I think that the view of a mind as an optimizing system it's a mathematical model of significant but limited utility, and I think we're very coupled with the universe around us in ways that we don't understand. And once we increase our intelligence and change the way our minds work, we may stop modeling ourselves as function optimizers anyway. So I'm not sure that will always seem the most useful way to think of things. The whole distinction between here's the objective function, the utility function, and here is the learner that is learning how to optimize this utility function, maybe a kind of conceptual crutch that helps us build the next generation of systems. And there may be better ways of thinking about the mind than that. Because that ultimately that does lead you down a lot of difficult pathways.
When you say you want to become something, so imagine this newborn baby, and you take your grain of sand, right, that's been nanotech, and you insert it in the baby's brain.
Only nanotech, no femtech.
It's just a trillion time. So in effect, you've killed the baby, right? It's no longer human. It's 99.99999% creature. You're in there as 1% human. So if you decide to do this, it's a form of human suicide because you're just totally, utterly swamped by the vastly superior
But if you do it gradually, then maybe it's not.
You could. That's an option. But what do you want? What does humanity want? I mean, what's out there in a sense?
Well, then there's what does the universe want? And maybe the evolution of greater and greater intelligence with broader and broader capability is just something that is happening. It's been happening a long time. It's going to keep on happening. And we are just one small part of this ongoing process of growing complexity and intelligence. And what we feel like we want is sort of beside the point. The overall evolution of complexity and intelligence.
You get quite deist about it.
Okay, I talk so loud, I think it's all right.
Yeah, no, it's for the.
Sure.
Okay, I think we could get
One more question?
I think Alex was right.
Alex.
Yeah, so I wanted to comment on your earlier statement about how to get to AGI and the fact that sort of
Wait for the microphone. So maybe recorded for posterity.
So you said a few minutes ago that there's always a shortcut to achieve any direct economically profitable motive that doesn't lead directly to AGI, and therefore that's not the way. An economically profitable set of terms is not the way to get to AGI. I have a counterexample. Biology has made exactly that. Biology is subject to the constraint that, as Richard Dawkins pointed out very eloquently, climbing on improbable. You cannot have a biological genome expand in a population if it's not more fit than its predecessors, and you change pretty much one mutation at a time. And so by making all those shortcuts, which biology has certainly taken, you're not wrong that there are shortcuts to any given task you're trying to achieve. And biology has had to achieve just as concrete a task as economic, as companies do. Have to solve very concrete things, getting water, all that kind of stuff. And yet that has led to general intelligence, biological general intelligence. So I think that's an existence proof that solving all those little shortcuts and always building on them going forward can lead to a general intelligence.
Well, but Alex, the biology is not operating under the same kinds of resource constraints. But biology has a lot of energy to use and a lot of waste and redundancy and billions of years to get there, and doesn't have the rational, deliberative capability to find alternative, more efficient solutions.
So I have a comment on that too. I think that when biology gets more resources for its, if you want, pursuit, or simply just the path that led by chance to general intelligence, by duplicating and replicating many times and giving more resources to those most successful entities. And that's exactly what economic pursuit through private enterprise does. It gives more resources to something that's become a little bit more successful. And so if you do, even if you take a shortcut, but you get more resources, if you did it well, you're going to get more money than you put into it. Right?
Well, maybe. I mean, it's just if you look in the history of AI research so far, what you have is people trying to do exactly this, and in each case, what you arrive at is a narrow AI system that helps achieve some practical goal and doesn't build that much toward general AI. And so that has been the case so far, and in my own experience, that's been the case. That even when I have a kind of AGI-ish solution to a problem, if I have limited time and budget and the need to please a customer, there's always been some narrow AI-ish way to do 80% of what the customer wants with less cost and more speed and more reliability. And the realities of business tend to push you that direction. But I've been thinking pretty hard about this problem. So one example I have that might cut around this is, say, make a video game for little kids, maybe mostly girls, I was thinking. A video game that's a young human child. So 2013, everyone gets a 0-year-old, a virtual baby. 2014, everyone has a 1-year-old. 2015, every subscriber has a virtual 2-year-old. So in that business model, in order to keep along with the idea of the game, the AGI has to get a little smarter each year, right? So that it's built into the business model that you need to get greater and greater general intelligence each year, because that's the way the game is. So maybe by doing something very devious like that, you can find a way to make a business model where AGI, the path to AGI is built in. But if you don't really build it like that, I think you're going to be able to find some shortcut, and we could go through various areas of business, and I could give you in each case how you could use narrow AI to get 80% of the way there at like 20% of the cost.
On that note, you argue that we can get to AGI by 2020. So the best way to predict the future is often to look at the past. What have we achieved in the last 10 years?
Well, we've achieved AGI, and a human level of AGI in the last 10 years. So are you saying we should look at what we've done and then do something different because it's failed?
No, I'm just really, if I want to believe your predictions, I want to see how well we've done in the last 10 years. I mean, there's an exponential growth perhaps, but still, we should have grown exponentially along the same path.
Well, we've done badly at working toward AGI in the last 10 years. And I think part of the reason is that almost all AI resources go into narrow AI. So I think that's the record of something not to replicate rather than something that we should copy.
I recently argued at the Board of Advisors of Caltech's Information Science and Technology that they should be investing in AGI. And their answer was, well, we are very small, we can't do everything, there's enough people working on that. And I tried to tell them that maybe there weren't enough people working on that.
Brad, go ahead and follow.
Okay. Okay, so just kind of following up on your point, Ben, that there always seems to be a shortcut when you're looking at business questions and how can you solve things easier than just building an AGI. Then, to some people who are worried about what AGI might cause, this leads to the obvious question, well, if there is always a better way to do it, then why would you build AGI except to replace yourself?
So it's not necessarily that there's a better way to solve the fundamental problem that we'd like the AGI to solve. It's more that there's always a better way to get someone quickly to making money in that business niche, which is what they want. So for example, look at an example of Google or a search engine company, right? I mean, yeah, without an AGI, you're not going to make something where you can just describe in a couple sentences what you want and it will find you the information that you want. That's not going to happen. It's not like Google has a workaround to solving that problem with really generally intelligent information retrieval. Rather, they may decide, well, for us to make money, really smart keyword search and ad placement is better, and then we can put in a bunch of narrow AI systems for, you know, travel planning and for looking up information about the weather and for product search. Now, they're not actually addressing the problem you would address with generally intelligent information retrieval. What they figured is, well, if we made a generally intelligent search engine, that might take us 5 or 10 years of development. In that time period, we might be put out of business by someone else. Whereas if we make a bunch of narrow AIs behind our keyword search engine, we can make more money in the next 2 years, and that matches our business goals better. So it's not that we're getting the AGI-ish technologies, it's that the companies are meeting their goals in those business spaces by doing narrow AI, and they're making more shareholder value in the near term that way. We have a stupider world in which people can make more money each year.